Good evening, good folks. Welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission General Session for this Tuesday, August 23rd of 2022. So we're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance, prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and then roll call, and then have public comments on any agenda item. So if you wish to speak on an agenda item, there are comment forms in the back of the room. Please submit that to our deputy clerk over there, and she'll get that to me, and we'll acknowledge you before speaking on any items. Oh, and then our clerk, Mish, is there also. Mish is there as well. Please refrain from commenting from the audience during any deliberations or during public comment. At the time of public comment, I'll invite you up to give your remarks. You'll have 3 minutes to provide remarks. You will not be asked to share your address, but please provide that on the comment form because we do need that per commission rules for public comments. So if you care to join me and anyone else in prayer, please stand, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remove any caps. And we are joined by Pastor Tom Beetham of the Lakeside Baptist Church. Thank you, Pastor.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this evening, to be more precise, and we thank you for the fact that every gift that we enjoy comes from you. We thank you that the gift of leaders and government and all of the different pieces that make our city run, all of that is a gift from you. And tonight we just want to pray that this meeting would be truly honorable in your sight, that you would help us to be full of desiring what you desire, to have a city that is a city where we do seek and promote what is right and good and loving and helpful. So we ask for your wisdom and your guidance tonight. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Emery?
Here.
Commissioner St. Clair?
Here.
Mayor Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Hood?
Here.
Commissioner Ramsey? Absent. Vice Mayor German?
Here.
Commissioner Gorman? Absent.
All right. So this brings us to public comment on agenda items. It's just getting myself organized with all the comment forms that I've received. So first up, we have Paul Korndorfer joining us from the Lakeside neighborhood, speaking with regard to, I believe, the PUD, the Plan Unit Development for the Tiny Homes. Yes, if you come up to the podium, Paul. Thank you for joining us.
I'm not going to say my name here.
You can say your name again and you have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
I'm disagreeing on this, the small little houses that they propose to put on Lakeshore Drive and Moon Street. Do I understand it's going to be 2 lots down there covered with like 10 of them, right? 10 small little houses. And it just doesn't fit the neighborhood. We can go 4 stories up down there with apartment complexes. And I'd rather have a brick and mortar down there than these tiny little houses packed in. It kind of looks like a trailer park or a campground to me. And it just doesn't make any sense. So why don't these people, or put it at the end of McCracken Avenue, when you go into the Milwaukee Clipper there, there's room to put them down in there. They're kind of out of sight, out of mind. And you can still use Lakeside, and you can still use the launch ramp, the bike path, all that. But it just doesn't make sense when we can go up 4 stories with apartment houses and make it look like downtown. You know, that's just my opinion. That's all I want to say, I guess. So I'm against it.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you much. Appreciate your perspective and you joining us tonight, Paul. Next up, we have Mr. William Gibner. Joining us from the Lakeside neighborhood as well.
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
William Gibner, and these micro things you're putting up down there in Lakeside, that's just a bad idea. You guys know it. Everybody here knows it. It's just a bad idea. You know, I don't know what your motivation is for this. I mean, why in Lakeside? Why are you putting all these bad ideas in Lakeside all the time? You overran us with the marijuana thing, and no one wanted that, and now no one wants this. And what good are these meetings if you're just going to do what you want and not listen to the people? I think the maintenance there is troubling. Parking is troubling. Garbage, you know, it's going to break the character of the neighborhood. Lakeside's been there a long time, and they haven't had any of these micro things, and with the clotheslines strung up between them with the underwear, and okay, so anyway, just stop with this. It's a bad idea. Everybody knows it.
Thank you, Mr. Gibner. Appreciate you joining us, sharing your perspective, and be happy to chat with you further after the meeting about your concerns with developments happening in Lakeside, which are primarily driven by private entities, not the city of Muskegon or the city commission. Next up, we have Nicole Vandenberg joining us, speaking with regard to the minimum square footage requirement and that adjustment.
Hello, I'm Nicole Vandenberg. I'm a local realtor. I work in Grand Haven for Coldwell Banker. I've been a builder for the last 12 years. I spend about half my day building single-family homes and the other half selling them. So we're not just talking about Lakeside when we're talking about minimum square footage. We're talking about the entire city. When you're talking about 550 square feet, there's a project I'm doing in Fruitport Township, and each house there is 640 square feet. I can't even tell you how much interest we've had in those as rentals. They're little 2-bedroom houses. They don't look like trailers. They look like the character of the neighborhood. I wouldn't call 550 a micro house. There's plenty of houses in Muskegon that are 550 square feet. A more common size for a small home that we would see is about 750. There's a lot of those. A typical one-story house anywhere in Muskegon is usually under 1,000 square feet. And when we're talking about building, builders tend to think in per square foot prices. You can build a house for $100 a square foot. So when you're talking about 550, that's $55,000. That's very, very, very reasonable. So when I see all these vacant lots in the city, and I think, okay, how do we fill those up? How do we get these baby boomers that are retiring into some smaller houses to free up the other houses that are for sale? I think that the community could start building smaller houses. I think churches could start building smaller houses. When you get to this square footage, it becomes approachable for people to do this themselves, and potentially, people that weren't able to get loans with traditional way, now they can buy materials and go along and build their own house, which everybody has the right to do. Everybody that has the right to pull a permit as a homeowner without a builder's license. And I think this is a huge opportunity to get more taxpayers in our city. I think it's a huge opportunity to get the vacant lots to go away everywhere in the city. I think this is a much larger issue than just Lakeside. And I think it's important to remember that one lot means one home unless it's a PUD. So the majority of what we're talking about here is single-family home lots that are already platted. They're going to have to conform to the setbacks, and they're going to have to conform to every building code that every other house in the city has to conform to. And when you give the opportunity to a developer to build something, I don't think that that's a bad thing, because that's just one less home that developer is going to buy and take out of the inventory for the people in the community. Because we all know that Airbnb likes to come in and, buy up homes and do that. So I think this would be a good solution.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining us tonight and sharing your perspective. Got a lot of people wanting to speak tonight. So I'm navigating all these forms. And just to clarify for everyone in the room, as well as that maybe watching at home on Facebook Live or YouTube or Comcast Channel 96, we have two items under new business that we've heard from thus far on, one of which is an amendment to the zoning ordinance to reduce the minimum housing unit sizes. And then there's a separate item that's a planned unit development for 2033 and 2044 Lakeshore Drive that is requesting the ability to accommodate up to 10 tiny homes, so to speak, at that location and that location alone. So one's a general zoning across the city, and one is a specific zoning modification for just that corner at Moon and Lakeshore Drive. So next up, we have Mr. Craig Person joining us from the McLaughlin neighborhood, wishing to speak on the amendment to the zoning ordinance for minimum housing unit sizes.
Hello everybody. Some of you may know me by all the Facebooking I do on the positive changes Muskegon has made. And yesterday I went out, I own Blue House Manor on the corner of Isabella and Pine Street. I live one block over on 169 Iona Avenue in Muskegon. I live on about a half of the block on Isabella on one side. And I also own a big lot and a house on Iona. I have an elderly mother who has recently had a stroke, lives in Nashville, and is stubborn, difficult, and if you want to know where I got it from, it's from her. She needs a place to live where I can be close by to her, and I have this big lot next door. I was homeless in my 20s. I was homeless 3 times. I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps and went out and said, not only do I not want to be homeless, I want to help other people not be homeless either. So that's why I got into real estate, and to me, it's a quintessential American dream. Every day I turn away somebody who calls me up and asks for either a single bedroom or a studio apartment because that's what they can afford. Because I have a platform in which I share good ideas about Muskegon, I released an interview I did with WZZM about a week and a half ago or so. And people have really responded to it. I'm getting calls at 4 o'clock in the morning. How do I get it? I want one. I think I live in this community. I want to build my first home. I want to have a home built for me. This is somehow awakening up that American dream in people, the same way as COVID did when people stayed home with the stimulus package. And now I did a whole documentary on people who started their business during COVID, including me starting Coffee with Craig on Facebook. I would like folks to air their opposition to this in a civil way, and they've done so on my Facebook page, so if you're interested you can go to it. But more importantly, I got overwhelming support for this to happen. And what we're talking about is just reducing the size of a house, and that comes with a great many benefits. Every day I did a video tour yesterday of the lots just across the street from Blue House Manor on Pine Street in Isabella. There's several lots that are there. West Urban Properties is building a beautiful house in a lot that I've seen trash thrown in, mattresses was thrown in it over this past winter. The kids throw broken bottles down on the sidewalk and ground. They don't care about the property. It's gotten bad. And to see a new house go up means that there's a homeowner that's going to take care of that lot across from my building, and I can now take pride in looking at every day. But not everyone can always afford a house that size. One of the biggest things I noticed when I first got here is, where's the middle class in Muskegon? That takes jobs, it takes diversity. We need steps up in our options in housing as well. I think this is the way to go, and I thank you for the 3 minutes that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Person. All right. Also have, speaking on the same item of amendment to the zoning ordinance, minimum housing unit sizes, we have Mr. Ratan Khatri joining us from the Nelson neighborhood by way of West Olive. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide remarks.
My name is Ratan, last name is Khatri, and presently residing at Peck Street. My house in West Olive is for sale if anybody wants to buy it. Anyway, I'm a landlord, as some of you know, and own a few properties there in town. And same thing, I turn away a lot of people, almost 2-3 a day sometimes, and 2-3 a week for sure. They're on fixed income mostly, and I have nothing to offer them. And the unit size definitely needs to be adjusted, and that's going to give the opportunity for developers and builders to put up the smaller properties that can accommodate them price-wise and space-wise. Too many people that are maybe renting a larger house, unfortunately what happens is they get swamped by family that can't find other housing and things, and it just deteriorates that housing situation. And then the city gets on us for people living in the basements and things like that. So there's a huge demand that's sometimes seen, sometimes unseen. So I'm all for the adjustment to the square footage to allow the developers to, build what they can and market it. And I'm hoping to, do the same myself in the future.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Catan. Appreciate your perspective and joining us tonight. Next up on the same item, we have Giovanni Hudson joining us from the McLaughlin neighborhood. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide remarks.
Sure. Hi, my name is Giovanni Hudson. You can learn more about me on Craig's documentary, Muskegon, What's to Come. I am a local here. I have moved here from the Silicon Valley, also LA. I have seen the cities of the future. I have lived in the cities of the future. I have helped build in the cities of the future. I want to see Muskegon also become one of those cities of the future. I have spent my life savings here, owning and rehabbing and rebuilding properties here in Muskegon, both Nims and Nelson neighborhood. Within the past year, I have been unable to build homes on the 4 lots that I currently own because I've been priced out. It's no longer affordable for me to build homes on my lots. I would like to I would like to ask and also show much support for this smaller zoning size, because as my friend spoke earlier and my lady spoke earlier, it'll be much easier for someone like me to build homes on my lots without paying a big developer to do the same thing. So I would like to, I'm done with my time. I just wanted to say that this would be a great benefit to Muskegon. Not only would it help just other builders come in, but small people like me, who's spending my life savings, who's earned on salary. Nothing was handed to me, and I chose to spend it here to make a better life for me and my family here in Muskegon. So I would like to please show much support for this, and I hope everyone else will show support for this, so that small people like me, small people like my friends here, can help make Muskegon one of the cities of the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Giovanni. And my apologies, I misidentified your neighborhood as McLaughlin, and you hail from Nelson is your primary. All right, thank you again for being here with us tonight. All right, so I've seen a few people come into the room. Just so you know, we are in public comment period on agenda items, and so if you wish to speak on an agenda item, there are comment forms in the back room. Please fill those out and provide that to our clerk. If you wish to speak on a non-agenda item, do the same, but those comments will be reserved for the end of our meeting. So there's still a couple more comment forms on agenda items. All right. Next up, we have. Which item is that? It's on the same topic. I'm gonna.
Resizing the homes.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with that then,
Okay.
for consistency. The other two are on the PUD, so I just want to stay consistent on the subject matter right now. Yes. So, Mr. Randy Vanderwhite joining us from the McLaughlin neighborhood.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good evening. Yeah, Randy Vanderwhite, 1577 Clinton Street. I too am in favor of the resizing. I know I've heard from a lot of the property management folks that there is a demand for folks, single individuals or couples who are wanting to start off. So that makes sense. I do know that I've also heard that part of what's prompted this is that the homes that have been being built through the city and West Urban Properties, with rising cost of construction materials. I know one of the homes that was built in the McLaughlin neighborhood, a 3-bedroom, was going for $246,000. It's now down to $215,000. So I see how these homes can even help with the missing middle, but I want to remind the commission and the mayor that we still have people who cannot, these homes will not be big enough for families, for lower income families. So please keep in mind as we consider other things, affordable housing, not just housing for the missing middle. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderwhite. Appreciate your perspective and you joining us tonight. All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak on that item of the amendment to the zoning ordinance, minimum housing unit sizes, before we move on to the next item for public comment? All right. Now back to the plan unit development for 2033 and 2044 Lakeshore Drive. We have Nancy Halka joining us from the Beechwood Bluffton neighborhood. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
I have a question. With this proposal, is there an on-site manager that's going to be present there 24 hours a day?
We will ask that when we get to that item of the person requesting this plan unit development.
Because I see with our short-term rentals that is an issue. If you have a hotel, you've got someone there all the time. If you have a bed and breakfast, you have someone there all the time. But we have all these short-term rentals where nobody is there monitoring them, and that leaves the neighbors in that position to monitor that, and that is not fair to the neighbors. In some ways, I think this plan makes more sense than all the short-term rentals that we have. But as the gentleman said back here, maybe a higher and better use for that property is apartment houses to provide housing for all of the other people in our community who don't have housing. I'm sure you've all read the mission statement. It says right here, maintain and enhance the neighborhoods of the city. So I hope you have that at your forefront as you're going through these proposals. I think probably the smaller square footage for homes for people to live in is a good idea. We've heard why we need that. But when it comes to short-term rentals, I feel like we're doing everything for tourists and nothing for the people who are living here. And part of the reason I think some of our neighborhoods, Beechwood, Bluffton, Nims, Lakeside, and even downtown, is we have so many short-term rentals now that's upping the price for all the other houses, and people can't get in. I know that's happened in my neighborhood. Unless it's being sold for sale by owner, the prices go so up because the investors are buying them for short-term rentals. So I see both of these agenda items kind of connected to each other. So I just hope that these are just some things you'll keep in mind as you go through this. I think we do have a short-term rental explosion going on, and we want to maintain and enhance our neighborhoods. Well, we're going to have some neighborhoods that are going to disappear because as people get surrounded by these, they're not going to want to live there. And we do need housing for our residents. So whether that be through smaller square footage or regulating more of our short-term rentals or putting apartments, if that's the best use for a property. I just think all of these things need to be considered. So thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us and sharing your perspective. Next up, we have, is this Kristen Mutton? I'm sorry. Kristen Mutton joining us from the Lakeside neighborhood. Welcome. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
All right, I'll make it quick. I am the neighbor next door at 2055 Lakeshore Drive, and my main concern, I have a few. First off, you guys are talking a lot about minimizing the square footage, which is great, but that is not what this is doing. It's just short-term rentals. It's actually tiny homes on wheels. It's not even permanent structures. I haven't heard anybody talk about the utilities. Sewage, is it holding tanks? Where's it going? Because you have 10 homes on a lot. If you have a duplex, you just have 2 lots. It's a lot of people, so I think that should be something people think about. Also, the parking and the congestion in the alleyway, since there is no parking on site. Yes, the Gezzies have offered nicely to let them use their parking lot across the street, but there's no irrevocable agreement on that. They could do whatever they wanted anytime. Lakeshore's 2 hours parking just along the one side. Most of the residents on Lakeshore, all their parking is in the alley between Lakeshore and Moon Street. I just think it could cause a really big issue. And then like somebody else mentioned, people come to Muskegon, I'm sorry, but probably not for the food scene or the shopping, but they come because they want to ride their bikes, they want to kayak, they want to paddleboard, they want to be outdoors. That's a lot of gear. I don't know where it's going. Wetsuits, wet towels, they want to grill, they want a campfire. That's why people come here in the summers. I mean, that's a lot of equipment. I know my garage is full of it, right? Everybody has a lot of gear. So it's not going to fit in 214 square feet. And they're not going to walk across the street to their car to get it. So that's something to take into consideration. That's my main concern is the parking. I'd like to know more about the sewage and the utilities. And I just don't think it's the right location for it. I'm not against it, but I'm with it. With everybody else, you could use that space for something for the community versus the short-term rentals, and maybe something we should be considering, like a lot of cities do, is putting regulations on what can be short-term rentals to kind of hone that in. So that's all.
Thank you. Appreciate you joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts. All right, so that's it for agenda items. Last call for agenda items, public comments. All right, seeing none. We'll move on. We will be getting to those items momentarily, though. First, we have our consent agenda. Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda. There are a whopping 4 items on that one. Are there any of them that you wish to have removed for separate consideration and vote? Commissioner St. Clair.
Item D, please.
Any others? All right, commissioners. I'd welcome a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented, minus item D. Vice Mayor?
Yes,
Chairman?
thank you, Mayor. I move to accept the consent agenda as presented, minus item D.
Support.
All right, a motion by Vice Mayor German, supported by Commissioner Emery, to accept the consent agenda, minus item D. All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor German?
Yes.
Commissioner Emery?
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item D, Commissioner St. Clair.
I move to accept the 2023 Stop Violence Against Women grant and authorize staff to sign the contract.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner St. Clair, supported by Commissioner Emery, to accept the 2023 Stop Violence Against Women grant and authorize staff to sign the contract. Commissioner St. Clair.
Do we have anybody to talk about this? I saw Captain Rush in the hall. There we go.
Welcome, Captain Rush.
Busy day today. So.
Sorry to pull you in.
Nope,
I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about this, given recent events. I think talking about anything, stopping violence against women is important. So
Absolutely. The Stop Violence Grant is services training officers and prosecution, which we've been involved in for a few years now, essentially. It's a conjoined effort between us, the Norton Shores Police Department, and the Muskegon County Prosecutor's Office. It's a Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, MDHHS is a division of victim services, and has approved the 4th year of this grant, funding the amount of just over $200,000 for 2 detectives to be assigned to a multi-jurisdictional violence against women task force. The public safety seeks to approve these funds. Basically, it's a 25% match, essentially, so that we could have 2 detectives and all their equipment assigned to the STOP grant to help. It basically falls around domestic violence and violence against women. We are highly involved in it, essentially, with Norton Shores Police Department, and it's basically a countywide, I don't want to say task force, but essentially we work together to specifically target these crimes, and we're basically involved in it. We're looking at, we just want to bring that up for our continued involvement in that is what we'd like to do.
thank you. I wholeheartedly support this, and I think it's a great use of city resources to continue to support this grant. So thank you.
Here, here. I echo Commissioner St. Clair in that regard, and thank you, Captain Rush, for joining us. And before you go, because it's top of mind, and I may forget at the end of it, I just want to, it's tangential, and not exactly tangential, but you're here, and I just want to say thank you for serving in the past few months as our interim public safety director as we sought to find a new one. And if our city manager will remember at the end of this meeting to give an update to our community on that, that would be welcome. But I just wanted to say thank you for serving in that capacity and for your ongoing good work for our city.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a great city to serve. I've been here for over 20 years, and it's certainly my honor. I was glad I could help. Just so we are aware, August 29th, there will be a swearing in of our new public safety director, and I assume we will continue the same charge which we always have.
Excellent. Do you have a question or comment, Commissioner Hood?
Yeah, I have a question about the Stop the Violence Against Women grant. You said this is targeting domestic violence. Is there any other type of violence against women that this is targeting that we just don't know about?
It's usually we just think around domestic violence as kind of the big key phrase essentially, but it's all violence against women essentially. Yes, it's just primarily it's domestic violence because domestic violence covers such a wide range of violence against women, but it can go from domestic violence to sexual violence, and it's the whole gamut essentially. There's specific cases that are targeted for these detectives to concentrate on, so they don't have to worry about other caseloads or something. They can concentrate fully on that, just as you would for sometimes you'll have task force against children violence or something like that. We just concentrate on this with the other agencies in our prosecutor's office.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood. And in that same vein, though, I'm curious. Oftentimes in domestic violence situations, the victim, and I don't know if I'm using the right word, maybe there's a better word now, the person that it's the crime or the pain, the violence is being inflicted upon, sometimes is not keen on following up charges or even reporting it or pursuing it because they may be scared for their life, literally. If the public witnesses it, they can be eyewitnesses and they can contact the police and share that with the police. Is it preferable that they get the video documentation though? And can then the police refer that to the prosecutor and the prosecutor can choose to prosecute even if the person that's receiving the violence does not wish to pursue it? Do you follow me?
Yeah, that is correct. We law enforcement and basically based on eyewitness testimony can be a victim, can be the voice for a victim essentially, the way the state has domestic violence, but whether that can be admissible in court or not obviously would have to be based on the prosecution's level, what they would need for the case, but we always look for best evidence for any investigation with the most solid so we can make sure we get that seen.
Okay, so just something for us to be mindful of, that when you see violence, say something. Don't just trust the person that's receiving the violence to follow up on it.
Absolutely. If you see it, report it, please.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Appreciate you. All right. Any other questions or remarks on this item? Nope. All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hood?
Yes.
Vice Mayor German?
Yes.
Commissioner Emery?
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next up, we have new business, and that is an amendment to zoning ordinance, minimum housing unit sizes. We have Director Ekholm. So my understanding, and thank you everyone that has come out tonight to speak on this item, and the folks that have come on this specific item, it's been roundly supportive of the folks that have given comment. But it's my understanding we're going to be returning this to the Planning Commission for further discussion, consideration, and potentially tweaking before it comes to the City Commission for final consideration.
That's correct, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So what I would request is that we allow the Planning Commission to hear this item again. We do have some administrative tweaks we want to make to the actual language. There's a few things that we found to be repetitive, and there's a couple areas where we want to change some language. Nothing that would impact the actual change to the ordinance. But beyond that, we got feedback from some planning commissioners after the meeting that they would have supported it had they had a better understanding of what it was truly changing. So in order for everyone to walk in one accord on this and make sure that we're kind of being considerate of them, rather than just trying to recommend pushing it through against their technical recommendation, we want to bring it back because we believe that they would support it if given another chance to hear it. So.
All right, excellent. So some refinement, some further clarity, and then their reconsideration, and will ultimately come to the city commission for our consideration, deliberation, and vote on whether or not to modify the minimum square footage requirements. So, commissioners, do you have any questions or remarks at this time on this item? We're not going to be making any motion at this time. It's just going to be returned to the planning commission, and then will be at the September 15th.
13.
Oh no, that's the city commission.
Oh, sorry, 16.
So do you know if the planning commission is going to be the second Thursday or the third Thursday? Do you happen to know?
I believe it's the second Thursday.
Okay, so it's going to be before our next city commission general session then. So look to September 9th, or Thursday, September 8th. Then for it to be brought to the planning commission. So, all right. Any questions? Comments from the city commission? All right. I'll just say I'm generally supportive of what we're trying to accomplish with that. And I look forward to it being considered again at the planning commission and then brought to the city commission.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Director Ekholm. All right. Next up in our new business, we have plan unit development at 2033 and 2044 Lakeshore Drive. Who's leading out on that? All right, we have Director. Just a moment. We've got Director Ekholm. It's going to be leading out this. If you can bring us up to speed on what the PUD is, and then we can invite the person or the entity pursuing this plan unit development.
Sure. Good evening again. So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm playing designated hitter for Director Franzek because he's on vacation. I have followed the process, so just to give everyone an overview, this is a piece of private property, as I think everyone knows by now, as opposed to a public site, which was previously suggested by the developers. It did receive recommendation for site plan approval from the Planning Commission at their last regular meeting, which is why it's before you this evening. I think the developers are here to kind of walk through what their plans are for the site and the property, and pending your approval, they would be looking to start to place units. So it would be a short-term turnaround.
All right. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time? We can always ask questions of the staff after we hear from the developer. Otherwise, I will invite Ms. Pam Westra up to speak on this proposal. All right. No questions for you right now, Director Ekholm.
Thank you.
Welcome up now, Ms. Pam Westra. Welcome.
I'm Westra, and thanks for having us here tonight. We have been working diligently on this project for some time now, and we feel like that the site that we found in Lakeside is probably one of the most perfect sites. Thanks for inviting us to this meeting tonight and considering our project and showing some interest in it. Just to tell you a little bit about our team, I'm Pam. My husband Bruce is here too. And, oh, I didn't plug in yet, so I'm not up on the screen. So, our son Kevin and his wife Stacy are part of the team too. Kevin heads up mainly the building crew, and that's why he was still building tonight. So we are here at Adelaide Point Warehouses in Muskegon, building these houses ourselves. We design them, and this is our second Tiny Digs development. We were all living in Portland, Oregon for a while, about 8 years for Bruce and I, and we have Tiny Digs Portland also. But we are West Michigan residents and happy to be home, and my son had started a family at the beginning of COVID here, so Grandma and Grandpa had to come home. So here we are, loving it. This is our development in Portland, Oregon. It's right in the middle of the city, and experiential stays are the fastest growing segment of the travel industry right now. The top 5 options that people are choosing as their experiential stay are tiny houses, yurts, themed hotels, domes. People are wanting something unique and unusual and different to stay in. So they're kind of burned out on the regular hotel room scene. So to bring this, it's been successful in Portland, and this is kind of some views of our development there in the evening hours. And we're very proud couple years ago, we were in National Geographic Traveler magazine as a place to stay when you come to Portland, Oregon. Are unique and different. The interiors of them, we designed each one has a little bit of a theme to it, and each one is uniquely its own. Each one is different. So, pictures there. Our rock and roll house, the little blue house inside is very yellow, and try to make everything tasteful. This is the courtyard scene with some games out there, a couple propane fireplaces and artwork, a lot of landscaping and flowers. Aerial view. As you see, we are right in the center of the city in a residential neighborhood on the back two sides of the development. Our neighbors really like what we've done for the area and the parking lot that's there. It was a parking lot sort of place at one time. It was a used car lot. The city of Portland, for some reason, wanted us to be and required us to be on a paved lot that was fenced in. So that's why you see all the cement here. It's worked out fine. So the concept here in Muskegon is to bring these wheeled tiny houses as short-term rentals here. We have heard from a number of different people in the tourist scene and the civilian the neighbors and such. There is a need for short-term rental. There's a lot of older hotels in the Muskegon area, but people were ready for a little bit of a change here. And sometimes there's quite a shortage for short-term rental. We hope to bring 6 to 8 tiny houses to this site before the end of the year, and going into 2023, bring 2 or 3 more on site. Bring it up to 10 tiny houses there. This is our site plan for the lakes side development. And as you can see, there is a house there that is a duplex house that has renters currently in it also. And we plan to do some additional landscaping. The lighter color green is the additional landscaping that we have planned now, but there will be even more than that. There are some very old trees on site towards the alleyway, and the houses each have their own bathrooms. They have flush toilets, showers, sinks. There's a small kitchenette in each one, and as you can see off to the right here, they are all hooked up to city water, city sewer. They have 50 amp electric. They are hooked up just like an RV would be hooked up to a pedestal. So these are just some concept houses that we looked at as we were planning and developing some of our houses. There was some inputs from some other committees around town of some that they liked at Tiny Digs in Portland, some they didn't like at Tiny Digs. And so we're trying to stay with some of the suggestions that we had from some other entities around town. We are at Adelaide Point, which is just down on the lake shore, building these houses and giving locals jobs here. And one of our completed houses. We have 4 houses complete already and 2 more that started about 3 weeks ago that are in progress. This is the interior of that green garden house. Modern houses. And this is the one that's currently down on the parking lot and lakeside. Doesn't have the porches on it yet or the awning that will be on it, but this is the farmhouse, the interiors. Beginning of my staging inside there. Some people have expressed concerns, so we knew that would come up when we brought this because there were concerns of residential neighbors around us in Portland too. But we have a lot of testimonials here. I'm not going to read through those in this long meeting, but these are some testimonials from our neighbors, business owners, and residents that just love us there. Everybody has said positive things about Tiny Digs. Nobody's complained once we came in. They loved what we did to the site. We've had no problems with guests interfering with parking or rowdiness or trash-wise with what's going on in the neighborhood. We've done nothing but improve the neighborhood there, so. We just want to be home here in West Michigan. Home is where the heart is, and we hope to get this project going on real shortly. And we're not some big corporation. We're just mom and pop and our kids, and we are just, we don't have some big corporation backing us financially. This is all bootstrapped by ourselves, and we hope to bring tiny houses and a new idea to Muskegon. And I love also that, I know we've kind of overlapped, but I do love that it's up on the agenda about changing the zoning for the housing sizes for residents to live in too. I don't want to mix that with our project here, but I think the idea of tiny houses in the Midwest, it's not as prevalent as some of the coastal cities in the United States, but it's here to stay, and I think it's a thing that's needed and wanted by a lot of people. Housing is way too expensive these days for people, and a way to give people a preview of that and see if that's something that they would like. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Vestra.
Okay.
You've already answered one of the questions that was raised by the audience, which is with regard to the sewage. The other questions with regard to on-site management. How will you have on-site management, and how do you anticipate managing this if this were to be approved for that site, or if you find another site for it?
Right.
How do you anticipate managing it?
So in Portland, that was a big thing for us to worry about, and it was a concern when we started. And we actually had an on-site office to start with, and we found really that nobody really wanted or needed that. They wanted to check in on their own, just go to their tiny house and do their thing. And during COVID, we actually converted that office space to another rental space because it was just not even used any longer. We have security cameras all over site that are monitored, and if anything should be going on down there, we know about it right away. And the caliber of people that we have as guests don't seem to invite a lot of rowdiness or bad behavior. They're very respectful. These houses aren't like your regular hotel room that's barren. It's like you're walking into a home. They have a theme to them. There's a lot of little knickknacks around. There's little theme things that go with the style of the house. People don't even steal those. We have books in the houses. They use the books because they go with the theme of the house. They don't steal them. They don't ruin things. They come and enjoy themselves and enjoy the experience of it. And we're super hosts. We have 5-star reviews all the time, and people are there to enjoy themselves. They're not there to start trouble and ruin things. So we have a strict 10 o'clock curfew, and people abide by that. In the whole almost 7 years that we've been open in Portland, we've only had to go to the site twice in the evening hours to say, time to pack it in, So I don't think that's a bad track record for almost 7 years.
All right. Thank you for addressing that question from the member of the public. Commissioner Hood.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What's the proposed rental cost?
The cost is just like the airlines and other hotels. It fluctuates per season, and really what other entities in the area that are the same caliber are charging. And it can be anywhere from $150 to $200 a night. We found during COVID, we had to lower those fees just to get business. And once we got down too low, then we started getting some undesirable guests that we didn't want to have stay because then it invited undesirable people that were doing things that weren't appropriate in the houses. So we try to keep the rates up to help keep undesirable people from coming to. It's not like the $89 a night stay. that some of places are, and that invite maybe not as good a clientele to take care of the place like we want it taken care of for the kind of things that we've put in the homes.
Okay, not really understanding the undesirable people. How do you know who is undesirable or not by income?
Well,
but my other question is in regards to the rate also. I know in Muskegon in the summertime, the hotel rates go up like 2 to 3 times what it is in the other fall and winter. Is that what you thinking of doing also? Because you said you're trying to keep up with everyone else.
yes, that's basically in the travel industry, that's how the travel industry works. Just like the airlines adjust their rates during the Christmas holidays to capture more revenue for them to stay in business for when the slower seasons are not there, where there's not enough travel for people, or not enough income for the airlines either. You know, and same with hotels. Hotels fluctuate their rates from summer, winter, fall, to then it's like, okay, it averages out and you can stay in business then. It's just like the theaters, you have your matinees in the afternoon. You can go cheaper to the theater in the afternoon because that's not the most desirable time of day for most people to come. But if you're a person on limited income, then that's when you would go and stay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood. Commissioners, any other questions right now for Ms. Westra? Commissioner Emery.
I have quite a few. And a couple of them you've already answered, so I get to scratch those off for now. What are your tiny digs, your tiny houses classified? Are they a house? Are they an RV? Are they a trailer?
They are in limbo at this point in time, Teresa. They are, like in Portland, we fall under some of the food cart laws there. We are considered a hotel there, but in Muskegon we can't be considered a hotel because we don't have a 24-hour office. We're a short-term rental entity in Portland. We follow under their laws, and also under the hotels and short-term rentals, we're under their taxation structure, both of them. So these are taxed just like the hotels are in town. And then we also are considered a non-motorized RV park. So the tiny houses themselves, because they are so new in the United States, and actually the whole world really, there's a catch-up period when something new comes in as an entity. And there is an international, now the National Building Code, it's called the International Building Code, but it's on the national level in the United States. There is a code for building of tiny houses, but tiny houses on foundations. Now, some states are starting to adopt that, so then there's state codes for those. But as far as the tiny houses on wheels, that's a slower adoption period. And so that's coming, there's talk of it, but there's not the adoption as of yet for them. So they're everything right now. They're classified as RVs in some sense, and they're classified as homes, residential homes. So they fall under a lot of different categories. So until legislation catches up with them because they are so new.
So have they been inspected by electrical or?
We have certified plumbers and electricians that do all the work for those.
Okay.
So,
have they been inspected?
No, they have not been inspected because they don't fall under that inspection rule, because there is not a code for them yet. Okay. So, yeah.
Kind of like, never mind, I won't really. I was going to say kind of like pot in the state of Michigan. We don't have a lot of.
It's so new.
It's so new.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
there's
So-
all the laws and regulations for that type of stuff isn't ironed out yet.
Okay. Do you
And
know
we do
how?
build them to code, though.
Do you know, by your experience in Portland, how it has affected the home values of the homes around your property? Or has it at all?
I
or-
don't think it's affected them at all. All we see in Portland is home, just like we've seen here in the last few years, home prices are just going up, up, up.
Yeah.
You know?
So you
I
haven't had
think the
any of the
home
neighbors
price-
complain that it ran down the price or the
No,
value of their homes?
They actually have said they feel like it's increased the price of their home because we are so, it's so, before it was so run down on this lot. It was used to store a plumber's fleet. It was used to store an old school bus that somebody in the neighborhood, it was their camper. It stored old food carts that had blue tarps over them that had been sitting in there so long and not used, that the blue tarps were just in shreds and peeling off. And so it was very run down inside the fenced area. And the vegetation was all overgrown. And so they really appreciate the improvements that were done to the lot. So.
Okay, maybe Jake maybe may know something about that.
About what?
About does such, putting tiny digs there, will that affect the value of the homes around it?
I don't believe that it would negatively impact home values, but I don't necessarily think it's going to drive up home values because home values are by and large based on comparable sales, for comparable units. So obviously these are not being sold on market. They're not foundation attached homes. So as far as a curb appeal issue, or some of the things that are intangibles that affect housing values, I don't think it's going to have a negative impact. I'm saying that anecdotally without any formal data on the issue, but I can tell you that it probably won't drive up home values either.
Okay, I just wanted to get some kind of professional input on that for my constituents and my neighbors around there. Maybe Mr. Person knows as a.
Well, Commissioner Emery.
Okay.
Let's keep
Okay.
Let's keep
All right.
questions to
All right.
staff and.
I have every
okay.
confidence that
PUD
you would
applicant.
concur with me in all things.
Okay.
No, I honestly,
All right.
I
Well,
think that's a
thank
very,
you.
and even an appraiser would tell you there's no clear way to determine what any associated commercial use, would do to a residential property value. That's kind of tough to call.
Oh, that's true. That
Gotcha.
is true. And that's something I've had to remind to my constituents that this is commercial property. It is not private property. So, in a commercial and a business district. So, thank you for reminding me to remind myself. Thank you.
Just to clarify, it's privately owned commercial property.
Yes, that's what I
So
meant.
just one follow-up question, then we're going to go to another. We can always come back to you, Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
but
No,
one follow-up
I
question,
think
then
I'm
we're gonna
finished.
To another
So,
commissioner. Oh, okay.
because the rest of my questions were answered.
Okay.
So thank you.
Excellent. You're always welcome to ask more questions, too. I saw Commissioner St. Clair over here with her hand up.
Hi. So, how many people can comfortably sleep on a bed or a bed-like surface in one of these?
There's a queen-size bed in all the lofts, and some of them will have a fold-down couch that maybe a third person can stay in.
Okay, so we're not looking at accommodating many people.
No, they're very small.
Okay.
And people aren't comfortable in them. Try to, we've had some families that try to come and, no, we recommend they go into 2 separate units and, yeah.
Okay. My husband and I like to use tiny homes when we travel, so I have some personal experience living in them short-term, vacationing. They are a lot of fun and a really different experience. As, a person that my kids aren't at home anymore, so I don't have to worry about toting them around. It's been a lot of fun for us to, go try something different. I will say that I'm glad that we are looking at something besides a public park for this. I know there's been a lot of parks proposed and a lot of people very upset about that suggestion, and I was hoping that we would find a private lot that would suit the needs. I actually am a lakesider. I live right around the block from this site. I drive past there 2 to 4 times a day. And I will say, I think this is going to be an improvement over the current usage of that lot, which seems to be to hold construction equipment and other things that are not beautiful. So I think that it will improve my view going by there. I also I think that we do have a short-term rental problem in our community, and I think that moving in a direction where companies aren't buying up homes in which families could live and then turning them around every night. I mean, Lakeside is packed with short-term rentals. I walk the neighborhood, and within 2 blocks, there's 20 of them. And they're not necessarily good neighbors, and they're not necessarily bad neighbors, but I would rather have families who could live there. So if we had more options like this, maybe that would pull a little bit of the air out of that market until we can get around to regulating it. So I'm excited about this, and I would like to see it happen. I think that one of the benefits of this is it is on wheels, and if it turns out that this is a terrible idea, we can wheel them away, and it will not be in the neighborhood anymore.
And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when we get it all dialed up and improve the lot and put the extra landscaping and such, and picket fence around the front and side, and so I think it's gonna look really cute when we get it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner St. Clair. Vice Mayor German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Johnson. Talking about 10 micro lodging units. And one of my concerns is, now are you going to build these structures right at the spot, or are you going to
No.
wheel them in, or?
We're in Adelaide Point. Are you familiar with the big Adelaide Point development? We have a warehouse there that we're building these houses in, and then we pull them in, build a deck on them, or bring the deck from the warehouse, put an awning and a deck on them, so people can sit outside on the deck and the porch, or around the propane fireplace.
And how often will these be transported? You said there won't be a foundation or anything like that.
No.
The liability or structural damages to weather or anything like that, will it sustain? And
The ones in Portland have been there for almost 7 years now, the ones that are there. They're doing just fine. We don't move them in and out. We've shifted them around the lot a little bit when we bring another new one on, and so they have shifted around. If you see some of the old videos, there's a lot of YouTube videos on our development. Google Tiny Digs on YouTube, and you'll see some of the placement of some of them has changed. Bringing a new one. We started out with 6, and we have 12 there now. So we have room for 15, and I know there was some concerns about it being crammed in. Actually, I was quite surprised the other day. I didn't do the square footage of the whole lot, and really our Portland development is only about 3,000 square foot bigger than the Lakeside. And we have 12, but we were slated with the city for 15 houses there, and room to spare that you can't even see on those pictures that I showed, because there's another whole section beyond the aerial views that isn't used.
yeah, and that was my next question. Are you planning on expanding the project?
Not past the 10. We wouldn't feel like that there was enough room to do that there. So we want to keep some green space and, have our little chairs and fire pits, and we have cornhole and horseshoes, the little rubber horseshoes, so you don't hear the clang clang all evening long. But and giant Jenga, and families, they come, especially when COVID kind of broke loose. We had so many families last summer. They would rent 4 or 5, or maybe even the whole development, and they would say, thank you, this has been such a break for us. And it was cute. There was one family that came with extended family, and some of the family had been vaccinated, so they got their own tiny house, and even members in the same household that hadn't been vaccinated, they got their own tiny house. And Aunt Martha over here, she got her tiny house, and then they all came together around the fire pit that they had to themselves. Shared conversation and had a good time.
So one more
Very happy.
question.
Clarifying question though before your follow-up, Vice Mayor Chairman. You said you were slated for 15 hours. Are you referring to the one on Moon and Lakeshore? You're talking about Portland. Okay,
in
I just want to get
Portland.
clarification.
No, we had,
Okay.
when we went.
Okay. I was like, I cannot envision.
No
way.
No.
So okay.
No.
I just
10,
wanted to get clarified.
10 is the limit at Moon and Lakeshore.
All right. Follow-up, Vice Mayor Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so these homes are going to be for anyone that wants to stay there long-term?
No,
Or just
short-term.
short-term? Okay,
Yep.
I just want to get that clear.
The definition of short-term rental is 30 nights or less.
30 nights
And so we've never really I've had a couple business people that have come and stayed in Portland for maybe 3 weeks at a time. But basically, people are in and out in a couple days. Some people might stay a whole week and explore the whole city and all the options. But Portland as a city is kind of a transient. They come into the airport and then they're going, they might stay a couple days in the city, but then they're going to the ocean or the mountains. And so there's a lot more that they're seeing, and it's an international airport right in the city. And so people are coming out. But we'll be having the guest books in the house. Will have all the suggestions of things to see and do in the city. And actually, when we went to the luge last fall, they said, do let us know when you get this open, because we're sending people up to Montague and Whitehall because we find in the wintertime there's not enough options of places for people to stay here in town.
Right, thank you.
And I heard long ago now we started investigating this project a couple years ago, and I heard at that point in time that there was a consultant for the city that there are people that come in from outside and take a snapshot of your city and say, this is what your city needs to round it out and to promote the city more, and you need something unique and different. And I heard that they did mention tiny houses as one of the suggestions in their presentation to the city. So we were really excited to hear that they wanted an alternative, something unique and different, because that's what people are wanting right now.
Thank you, Vice Mayor German.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners, for Ms. Westrow? Do you have any questions for Director Ekholm or any other staff members? All right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Westrow. Commissioner Emery.
Just a quick question to follow up. Who determines do you determine the occupancy that is allowed in each of your homes?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The occupant. You say only 2 people or 3 people, no more than that.
It depends on how much, like, is the couch, like you saw the picture of the farmhouse, the black couch. That's a little settee. I mean, there's no way somebody's going to be able to sleep on that. So there's a queen bed in the loft. So it's a 2-person house. Okay. Now, if we have a couch, I just bought a couch for one that we're calling the lake house, and it's what we call a click-clack couch. It folds down, but there's the queen bed in the loft. Now, as an adult, you probably one adult might be able to sleep on it, but if somebody's got a couple little kids, they might sleep on that little couch.
So it's not like they're going to squeeze 10.
Oh, heck no.
No.
Teresa, you came down to the warehouse and saw some of these as in progress, but go by Lakeside and peek in there. There's a lot of boxes and stuff because I'm decorating in there now, but they are way too tiny.
Well, just
you know.
because one of the concerns is with Airbnbs, especially out in the Bluffton area, I hear a lot of neighbors complain that, yeah, they may be renting this short-term rental summer for a week to a couple, but then every night there's 20 people there. So
That can't happen
that
in
is a
these.
concern with the neighbors around this property.
Physically, you can't fit 20 people in one of these.
Yeah.
You can't comfortably even fit 6 people in them. They're tiny.
Yeah.
They're very tiny.
So if I was going to rent it and for a week and I invited my Muskegon family, we would meet down at the tavern at the Marine Tap
Right.
Room or
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, off-site somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I really, at Tiny Digs, you know, they in Portland, the family might come and meet there so that they can go out to dinner because they're all curious to see a tiny house, but then they're going out somewhere. They're not staying there. I know Airbnb has gotten a huge, big rap the last few years because, quite honestly, there's been some bad party scenes at some of the Airbnb houses. These are way too small for a party scene, and people, it's not big enough, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Emery. Commissioner Hood, I see your hand up for a question.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on. I just keep thinking when you said undesirables. How do you figure out what's undesirable? Just could you explain that?
So when I said that earlier, I've had Portland has a big drug issue there, and when we found that during COVID, when we would lower the rates so low just to have some occupancy, which all the hotels were playing that game because people weren't traveling and we were trying to stay in business. And what we found when we got down to that $99 a night, then we did have some drug users come in, and we do not want that in our establishment. If they want to use drugs, please go to some other place. We don't want that scene there. We want a safe, upstanding place for people to feel comfortable coming to. And that wasn't comfortable when we would go in and find paraphernalia from needles usage in the house. So that happened several times when our rates got really, really low.
Okay, that kind of explains.
Yeah,
Kind of what
and
you
that's,
mean.
I didn't want to really have to go into all that on,
Right.
on camera.
But I've been down and I visited the tiny homes back over here at Adelaide Point, and no, they couldn't fit 4 people in there for real. Especially comfortably, maybe 3. But I was just wondering when you said that, I mean, and the price range that you said that you had to go so you couldn't have undesirables. I just wanted to make sure that it was still, you know, you were setting it so these tiny home rentals, short-time rentals were for everyone.
They are. We want everybody to come. We're very open minded people as business people, and in Portland everybody comes and everybody was welcome except the drug users that were needle users. We didn't really appreciate going in and cleaning up after that. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood, for seeking that clarification.
Thanks.
Question for you, Ms. Westra. You're not anticipating to have an open pit communal fire on this?
We have propane fire pits at Tiny Digs Portland because we didn't want sparks and ash and logs and people building great big huge bonfires. You know, we didn't feel comfortable about that in the city, and so that's what we chose for Tiny Digs Portland, and it's worked out really fine.
Okay.
At some point, you know, they do run out of propane, and so it's not like, you know, the people turn them on, there's signs on them, please extinguish them when you're done, turn them off, and like your barbecue in the backyard, you know, turn them on.
How did you arrive at the number of units that you sought here on this site?
Economically, for one, and from the space that we have in Portland, too, and because of fire codes that are established through the city that we found out about in some of the other meetings. There has to be at least 10 feet apart of any combustibles as far as structures, and that's including steps and awnings, and it has to be at least 10 feet apart. And if you drive around the city, that's the housing code here for all the big housing developments like the Hartshorn down by Adelaide Point, the new condos down here on Muskegon Lake, the housing units that are down there, and even on some of the side streets here. I forget the name of that development company that's got a lot of houses that they're building around town,
West
doing the
Urban.
little infill. Urban developers or
West
something
Urban.
like that. A lot of those are just the 10-foot distance apart also. So that's the code that we're abiding by also.
Okay. So will these be registered as short-term rentals?
Yes,
with the
they
city of
will be.
Muskegon?
Yes.
And so our regulations for short-term rentals do and require inspection, so it would be inspected still. Correct. So we're not taking questions from the audience. Thank you. You're welcome to come up with a general comment or meet me after the commission meeting. Director Ekholm, were you about to add something?
I was just going to add that I did hear from the inspections director during the meeting. I believe he's watching, and he mentioned that the Michigan Construction Code currently doesn't classify any tiny home designs as single-family homes or homes in the traditional sense. So the site would be regulated like the same way as an RV park. So there will be electrical and plumbing inspections as to the pedestals and how they connect to the individual units. He did not specify about rental inspections. But there was a question earlier about inspections, and I wanted to bring that up really quickly.
Okay, so that may be a remain to be seen.
Yeah, I'll try to
aspect
find out.
on that.
Yep.
We have talked with the short-term rental department several different times, and specifically with Kim. And he said that the interior, because there's not a governmental body in the state or the city that regulates tiny houses on wheels yet, it'll be an exterior inspection, making sure we're abiding by that 10-foot, making sure our porches and our steps are to code and railings are to code, but the interiors of these don't have a code yet. So, yeah. But we do build to code. We build to code as far as we can. Like they're not built to code to stand up in the loft because tiny houses can only be 13.6 tall to go down the road. And they can only be 8.5 foot wide to go down the road. So you are bound by those. You can have lofts in them, but they don't meet housing regulation and code because you can't stand up in them because you can't build them that tall to go down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, this is a special classification of
It's a
tiny
very,
home.
very,
These would
very-
not be the equivalent of tiny homes if we were to allow, say, a planned unit development elsewhere for long-term living
Right.
tiny homes.
Right.
These would not be comparable to them.
Well, they
essentially.
in different parts of the country, they are becoming very prevalent of having a whole RV park or a whole development just of tiny houses. Like I said earlier, up and down all the coastal states of the U.S., Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Alabama, Tennessee's getting a bunch of them now. There are actual housing communities of tiny houses. And they are these on wheels with a loft for sleeping in, but there's not the codes yet for the interiors of them. Because it just takes a long time to get those codes through. And the international code that I spoke of earlier, that's the building code, that took some committees like 8 years to just get that on a national code level passed and approved. and that's just for ones on foundations.
Yeah.
Well, there are
And that's
like
anticipating 400 square feet or less for those
Right.
tiny homes per the International Building Code.
Yep, and about 6 to 8 states now have adopted that code, and other ones are looking at it and coming along. And there's cities in some states that have adopted that code, and it's all kind of a trickle-down effect, you know?
Okay.
The state can adopt it, but then the cities also have to adopt it, so.
Okay. I have one more final question for you at the moment. Maybe more will come up. But for now, have you, outside of applying for this PUD and bringing it to the Planning Commission, which PUDs have to go first, the Planning Commission makes its assessment and then recommendation to the City Commission, and we have final determination. Outside of applying for that and there being a public hearing at the Planning Commission, unfortunately I was not able to make that, so I missed that conversation. Manager Mike, so if you have anything to add from that conversation in the Planning Commission, we'd welcome it. Because you were there, and Commissioner Hunt, I'm not sure if you were there because I missed it. Apologies for my absence. Aside from that public hearing, have you done any outreach or engagement with the Lakeside neighborhood or the surrounding residents?
This is probably our 5th site that we have looked at in Muskegon. Well, 4th in Muskegon. We've looked at another one outside of Muskegon. We've had public gatherings. We were at a neighborhood association meeting that NIMS, Lakeside, and Glenside were at, residents of that. And that was when we were looking at the suggested McGrath Park site. And because of concerns of a commercial development coming into one of the city parks, that the neighbors didn't want to see that starting to happen, that the city parks be commercialized, we graciously bowed out. We didn't want to have a lot of adversarial feelings to start out a business there. So we bowed away, and that's quite honestly why we started looking at something to buy instead of leasing something from the city.
All right, so we're here now
Yep.
looking at private property in the Lakeside District for your proposal. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We may call you back up for
Okay.
additional questions, but
All right.
thank you for the moment.
Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, this proposed PUD encompasses property that almost entirely exists within a commercial context area of the Lakeside Form-Based Code, but which borders all the other context areas, which include heavy commercial across the street, mixed residential next door, and residential across the alleyway. Just to give you some additional background, our Lakeside commercial context area, per the form-based code that we've adopted, the intent of that is to reinforce and enhance the Lakeside Business District and strengthen its ability to thrive as a destination place for local consumers and tourists that provides service, retail, entertainment, civic, and public uses, as well as a variety of housing choices in a walkable urban form. In the Lakeside heavy commercial context area, right across the street, the intent is to continue the dense retail and mixed-use development pattern of the district, but to also allow for more intense uses, such as auto repair and research and development, to incorporate these more intense uses harmoniously within the walkable development pattern. The Lakeside mixed residential context area, which is right next door, and actually inclusive of one of these parcels, that would be 2043, is in a mixed residential context area. That's the one where the duplex is now. That intent is to allow for the cohesive existence of residential and business uses within the district. This context area allows for residential and small-scale commercial uses to be placed alongside each other in a walkable urban form. And then finally, the Lakeside residential context area, which is behind this parcel along the alleyway, that intent is to provide a variety of urban housing choices in small to medium footprint and medium density building types, which reinforce the neighborhood's walkable nature. So the type of activity contemplated within this proposed PUD seems to align generally with the intent of the underlying and surrounding context areas of the current zoning. And from my perspective, this type of activity, to echo what Commissioner St. Clair was saying earlier, can help alleviate the pressure on our existing housing stock being converted into short-term rentals. So So I see that value proposition there. I also see the value proposition of this type of accommodation supporting our businesses in the Lakeside District that have been struggling for a number of years for a variety of different reasons. So I see value there. Now, the density of the proposed activity is another matter. With 9 tiny homes on one parcel and the 10th unit being next door in the rear of the duplex, all of which are intended to operate as short-term rentals, this exceeds the scale of housing permitted in the mixed residential and the residential context areas of the Lakeside Form-Based Code. In either context area, a small multiplex building type would be allowed as a use by right, which could accommodate up to 6 dwelling units. So this is where I struggle, because I'd be more inclined to limit the number of tiny homes because I recognize the value, the concept, the company, and what they can offer to our city. But I'd be more inclined to limit that to just 6 tiny homes at the 2033 Lakeshore Drive. Meanwhile, I'd prefer the parking for these units to be accommodated on site, rather than expecting parking to always be available in lots across the street on either Moon, or across either Moon Street or Lakeshore Drive. I do have concerns about that parking not being self-contained with this tiny homes development and being separated, because it isn't, as someone alluded or mentioned in public comment earlier, it's not going to always be available. There's a chance it could be separated. Whatever deal has been negotiated with a nearby property owner, it could be undone and parking is no longer available for this development. So I have concern in that regard. So those are my thoughts and concerns. I don't want to negotiate with the developer right now as to understand whether or not they could accommodate 6 at that site or more, but I would welcome further engagement, whether it's 6 or 10 or what have you, with the neighbors to understand their concerns and seek to mitigate them. That parking one is a concern, but Manager Mike Zell might have some context or additional insights to share in that regard.
Well, within our form-based code in Lakeside as well as downtown, there are no parking requirements. So it would seem unusual to require something of this property that wouldn't be required of any other one in that same zoning.
So we do not require parking for residential, period.
There are no parking minimums. No parking
I realize
requirements.
we removed parking minimums in the downtown form-based code, but how can we have 0 parking requirements for housing?
Well, like you said,
Especially
it's a commercial zone.
Yeah, but in that area, that we have residential along that area. That's a bit mind-boggling to me that 0 parking requirements for residential. Because you said there's all the context areas in the form-based code do not have parking minimums, so therefore the residential context area and the mixed residential context area have no parking minimums or requirements whatsoever.
I'm not entirely sure about the residential, but I know for the commercial sites. Jake's shaking his head.
So the commercial sites, but we do have parking requirements for residential.
No.
No.
Okay. So that doesn't make sense to me when you have parking restrictions on the streets that you can only park for 2 hours. It doesn't make sense to me. So, I will have that further conversation with staff to understand why that's the case. But at first blush, that makes no sense to me. And in this particular case, I would prefer parking to be on site. And have scaled back density. The other question, though, even with the 6, and we can configure it in a certain way to make it as nice and aesthetically pleasing as possible, and I'm sure they would do that. They look like they've done a good job in the Portland operation. But someone raised a question, or there was someone in public comment earlier that raised a good point, and he was talking about basically the aesthetic of this development and what it would or could look like. And I think that's important to recognize specifically with the form-based code, because the form-based code is different from underlying zoning, which is more focused on activity, land use. function. Form-based code is focused on function and form and how they meet and meld and respecting the surrounding aesthetics and the surrounding community and neighborhood. And so I think that merits consideration when we are doing essentially a variance or deviating from the form-based code in this case. And so that's, for me, merits further discussion and exploration and understanding of how this necessarily aligns with that form, with that aesthetic of the area. I would also be interested in hearing from our, if we were to move forward with the proposed PUD, I'd be interested in hearing from our fire marshal about just any concerns that they may have and how we might be able to mitigate them if necessary. So I guess what I'm saying right now is I'm not prepared to vote in favor of this proposed PUD today. I would be interested in further dialogue and potential modification. But it is ultimately the pleasure of this commission is how we proceed. There is a motion on the table
I believe there is a motion.
approve the. Oh, there has been no motion.
I don't remember that there was, and I don't remember, if so, I don't remember who made it or seconded.
Okay.
And the clerk is indicating no
Kurt?
motion.
Okay. So we just jumped into the conversation. Typically we start with a motion. So we don't actually have a motion on the table. So that is up to the commission whether a motion shall be made in the recommended motion, a modified motion be made, or for this to be referred back to the planning commission or tabled to a future city commission meeting for further discussion. But just one moment, Commissioner Hood. Legal counsel had something to. Oh, you didn't have something to add?
Yes, I do. But
oh, you do? Okay.
I defer to Commissioner Hood first.
Oh no, I was just gonna make the motion. But go ahead.
Okay, I would.
That's what I sensed. That's why I wanted to get his input.
Well, I guess I following up on that. Remember that it will take 4 yes votes to adopt any action tonight.
Mm-hmm.
A 3-2 vote is not a failure. A 3-2 vote would be a no decision is made.
Mm-hmm.
So you would start from scratch, or could start from scratch again in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That maybe muddies it more than helps, but
Yeah. And in either case, or not in either case, if a motion were to approve this PUD tonight and adopted tonight, regardless of 4 or more votes, because we do not have a unanimous approval by all 7 members, this would require to come back like
No.
a zoning amendment, or no?
No, because
PUDs
this is
don't
not
function
an
the same way as
ordinance.
zoning
Correct.
ordinance. Okay. So this PUD, if voted on tonight and receiving 4 or more votes, would be adopted, and that would be the final action taken on it. One other question in that regard, because it was mentioned previously that, if this is, let's say, a mess, that they can be wheeled away. However, if this is a mess, we could revoke the PUD, but they're grandfathered in. Correct. And would not be compelled to relocate.
Correct.
Okay.
And when I hear people say that this is a mess, I'm taking that to mean there's going to be a slew of ordinance enforcement action taken, having nothing to do with land use.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So, given all that, commissioners, what are your thoughts? What additional questions do you have? Staff, you're welcome to weigh in as well on this, but commissioners and staff.
Need a motion?
Vice Mayor German.
Yeah. Given the information that I've heard, thanks, Mayor, that I've heard, and I think there's more discussion that could be had. I would like to see it go back in front of the Planning Commission and have them look at it, and also next time have our zoning director, Mr. Franzik, present, also to address any issues and concerns and questions as to parking, and as one of the issues that came up. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay.
I
So,
think Jamie could answer those questions.
yeah, perhaps Mr. Pesh can answer some of the zoning-related questions that you might have. If you'd like to come, if you want to ask any of those questions right now.
No.
Okay. No, not right now?
Just what was addressed.
Okay. I would personally say probably not best to send it back to Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission has reviewed this PUD and has approved this PUD on of the 5 members that were present, approved it at that for a recommendation to come to the commission for adoption. And so they're satisfied as is. If we said we're not satisfied as is, reconsider it, we should probably make those modifications or changes to bring them to our satisfaction now, or vote no, rather than sending it back to the planning commission, because they've already reviewed it and have made their favorable recommendation.
And I'm open to that as well.
We could table this to a future city commission meeting, and in the intervening time, have conversations with the developer, and if they're open to it, have conversations with the community in the Lakeside neighborhood to hear more directly from them and seek out potential concerns and issues could be mitigated. But Commissioner Hood.
I move to adopt the resolution and approve the final PUD of 2033 and 2043 Lakeshore Drive with the addition of 5 canopy trees to be located in terrace along Moon Street.
I think the problem is you've got one motion already on the table that has not yet been seconded.
You do?
No, he didn't actually make a motion.
Oh, I interpret that as a motion.
Were you intending to make a motion?
No, I was just basically making a suggestion. Just some.
Okay.
I would say.
If you didn't intend it as a motion, I'm
No, it wasn't. No, that's just was a thought for the commission to look at. Was my personal thought. Yeah.
I apologize.
Yep. But if it's counted as a motion,
nope.
It's your intent at this point.
You're right, and that was not the intent.
So it's not your intent.
Yeah.
Okay. We do have a motion.
I would like to see. Yeah.
Thank you, legal counsel. Not his intent. We don't want to overlook any commissioners that had made a motion. So thank you, Commissioner German, or Vice Mayor German. Thank you, Counselor. Commissioner Hood has made a motion. We have a motion on the floor to adopt the proposed PUD with those conditions. If anyone seconds it, then there will be further deliberation. We've already had quite a bit of deliberation, but then would go to vote. So is there a second for the motion that's on the floor?
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Hood, supported by Commissioner St. Clair, to adopt the resolution and approve the final PUD at 2033 and 2043 Lakeshore Drive with the addition of 5 canopy trees to be located in the terrace along Moon Street. So, any final remarks or further context from staff? Manager Mike's out.
Well, I guess if the vice mayor has questions about the zoning, I feel like we should try to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Would you welcome Mr. Pesh? All right. Mr. Pesh from our planning department, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Manager Mike. So, we talked about the parking and the density. I think that would be a huge issue. Is there something that the zoning department could look at to kind of solve that issue or amend?
Well, so this, like any other project that would be proposed in the Lakeside Form-Based Code area, would have no parking requirements on site. That's written into the Form-Based Code, and the Lakeside context areas are a part of that larger Form-Based Code. So to require that for this project, I agree, as City Manager Mike Sell said, seems a bit strange. It wasn't reviewed as part of the PUD and wasn't seen by the Planning Commission as an issue. And I think that they looked at the underlying zoning as the reason for that. To the point of there being 2-hour parking limits, there are also a number of other streets in the area that do allow for parking without time limits. So there are options along with the proposed off-street parking, shared parking agreements that have been discussed.
All right, thank you.
Any follow-up?
No.
All right. Commissioner, do you have any other questions for Mr. Pesh while he's up here? No? All right. Thank you. Yes, and I respect the no parking minimums in our form-based code and our various context areas. It's a little surprising that we don't have any parking requirements for the residential components. It makes more sense, perhaps, in the commercial, because we don't want expansive parking lots taking up otherwise property that could otherwise be productive use. Be that as it may, a planned unit development is oftentimes deviating from the underlying zoning. That's exactly why we're considering this planned unit development proposal. It's deviating from the square footage of the houses that we're allowing. It's deviating from the density of the housing. It's deviating in a number of different ways from our underlying zoning. And so I would feel comfortable deviate from our underlying zoning to say that the parking needs to be on site. That's my personal perspective on this. I'm just one of 7 members and 5 votes tonight. So that's my thought. I will acknowledge you as the property owner. No, if you would come up to the podium and provide your name.
My name is Dick Gezzi. We own 2 large. What do you want?
Yeah, I was saying Dick Gezzi joining us from
We own 2 large
Lakeside.
lots on Lakeshore Drive, and I have given them permission to use those lots. And there's plenty of parking in them.
Yeah, they're going to be using the parking. The anticipated parking is where?
Where is it? 1991 Lakeshore Drive and 30. What is our part? 1988, I believe, is the parking lot across the street.
Uh-huh. And are you anticipating selling the property in this parcel to the applicant?
Not
To the PD?
going to sell it, no.
No, I'm not talking the parking. The property at the corner of Moon and Lakeshore.
Are we going to sell them those parcels? Yes, we are.
As part of that purchase, is there an irrevocable agreement to use your parking lots for this development?
Is there an agreement yet?
No, is there an irrevocable agreement? They're saying, so if you were to sell the parking lot across the street, separately from them,
Yes.
that they would retain the right to use that parking lot, whomever were to acquire it in the future.
Yes, we will give them that in writing. Is
Irrevocable.
that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's irrevocable.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. I guess, just because we own the property, but I just think it's a good idea for Lakeside. I just, if we go back to 2002, there was Belcomb's Cove being built, there was the ferry dock being built, and Gezzi's Market being built. And those were the last new building structure permits that were ever pulled so far in the Lakeside Business District. I think we need to start getting it growing down there. There's so much potential down there. People love Lakeside. So that's kind of what I got to say about it.
Absolutely. I
right.
certainly
Thank you.
welcome this type of activity. And also, I appreciate the new screens you put on the windows of the doors at the harbor. Improves that aesthetic some. Thank you. So, Commissioners, any other remarks on this item at this time?
I just have one.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think it's a great collaboration with the gentleman there to work with the developer to help see that your project come into fruition, but to provide parking needs for those tenants or visitors who may utilize that those tiny digs. So, commend you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner German. All right, if there's nothing else, we're going to go to vote. Anything else? All right, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor German,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
No.
Commissioner Hood.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion is approved. Congratulations. All right, next up, we have any other business, and then public comment, general public comment.
Did we pull that again? Pull it again.
So Commissioners, we'll wait a moment while things settle down.
Oh, we got another one. I realized the Adelaide Point thing came up. Hi, how are you? Did it show?
Please carry your conversations out into the hallway. We still have business to conduct in this meeting. Thank you. All right. Any other business? Commissioners? Anything else we should bring up? All right. Manager Mike Sell, could you give us an update on our public safety director hire?
I would be happy to. So after a difficult decision, we have offered the position to Tim Kozel, who is currently working in Ludington, and he has accepted the job. His first day will be next Monday, August 29th. There is going to be a swearing in of him at 9 a.m. in this room. We're very excited to have him on board. We did have two really fantastic candidates, and it was a really difficult decision. But I do feel confident in this one, and I received a lot of support from our panel in going through this process, and appreciate all the public input that we received, all the people that did come to the stakeholder meetings and the public open house several weeks ago when we had those. So that has been very helpful, and I'm very appreciative of that. And while I'm super excited to have this position filled and get somebody with some, and get Tim here and get him working, I am just so grateful for Captain Rush. He has done such a fantastic job filling this gap for us. And, with me taking on this interim role and then having our public safety director retire, there was a little bit of anxiety that I had about that. And I was able to lean on Captain Rush anytime for any situation, and I am truly grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Manager Mike Sell.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Captain Rush. All right. Before we go to comments, I'm wondering, we've heard a lot of conversation tonight from the public comment and during our conversation of items with regard to short-term rentals and the benefit and the dilemmas and drawbacks of them at the same time. And so previously, well, it sounds like that there's some greater appetite amongst the commission to look at regulations of short-term rentals beyond the scope that we have presently. Previously, it was my understanding that we have limitations in how we can differentiate from short-term versus long-term rentals. That was at least the case with regard to the inspections and the registrations and whatnot. But I would be interested and welcoming of any information or options to consider that would be permissible under present law, in which we could refine regulations for short-term rentals, primarily with, at least from my perspective, with how to preserve our housing stock for residents, as we're seeing many houses being acquired, sometimes sight unseen, by investors from Chicago and New York and California and Texas, all over the place, simply to immediately convert them into short-term rentals. That is having the effect of displacing residents and making it harder and more costly to reside in our city. I know that's a concern of many. And so I just wanted to share that myself and legal counsel, if you could bring some insights and potential options to the commission. Perhaps at a future work session, we can examine that and discuss that and explore that and decide how we might want to proceed as a city. All right. Any other items for any other business? No. All right. Now we're going to go into general comment. First up, we've got Mr. John Carey joining us from the Campbell, I believe the Campbell Field neighborhood. Welcome. And thanks for your patience tonight.
Hey. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My purpose here today is the same as it was the last two times I spoke, and that's the long-term health of the downtown arena. Okay, I've distributed to each of you finances for the arena starting in 2018, 2019, and the 21-22 is a more comprehensive look. And I won't go into the details and the figures today right here, but I did include a cover sheet that has some bullet points on it that I think should be of interest. If not, I'm I'm taken back, but wouldn't be the first time, I guess. I would like to ask a question of our city manager, though. Is there a master plan for the arena? And if so, how would I get a copy of that?
Liberty of the manager, if you want to answer that, or we can refer that to our arena manager on that question.
It would be better to talk to our arena manager.
So the city doesn't have one, it's just the in-house?
No, we refer that question to our arena manager, Jake LeMay, with regard to questions on the operations of the arena itself.
Okay, but as a commission and as city leaders, we haven't formulated a master plan over the years for the future of the arena?
I believe, and Manager Mike Sell may be able to weigh in on this. Typically, we don't go back and forth either in public comment, but taking some liberty right now out of respect for your patience in being here and addressing this. But if I recall, there was some contemplation of potentially incorporating the arena into the next comprehensive update to our Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
Correct. I also see that our finance director is here who maybe could talk offline.
Okay. Would you care to speak with Mr. Carey after the meeting, or?
Yeah, I can talk to him.
Okay.
Sure.
Unless there's something that you feel compelling and want to share publicly right now.
No, the city is overall, we're trying to come up with a 5-year plan for our capital improvement plans overall.
Oh, as part of our general asset management plan? Yep.
So that arena will be included in that process.
Okay. So it looks like, the asset management plan as well as our forthcoming comprehensive update to our Master Parks and Recreation plan.
And if I could ask a quick question of you, who, if anyone, audits the finances at the arena?
We have a third-party auditor that we reappoint every 2 years to handle that.
Okay, and have they raised any concerns?
There have been no remarks in the most recent audit that I've read or otherwise I'm aware of.
All right. Well, thank you very much for allowing me the time, and I guess we'll just...
And if you have any specific concerns, I would raise that with our finance director and be happy to forward that to, and you feel free to copy me, and I'm happy to forward that to our auditor.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Appreciate you joining us. All right. Miss Ann Vandermont, are you still here?
Just left.
Oh, she's in the restroom? Okay, we'll hold off on her right now. We have a Harold Cummings Jr. joining us from Muskegon Heights. He left? Okay. Next up, we've got Miss Vina Coleman joining us from the Jackson Hill neighborhood. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing fine.
Excellent.
I just have one question. I came across a news article and it was talking about what's that little part down there by the law office, Route 31 or whatever they're gonna call it.
Oh, the new credit union?
No.
Oh, Harbor 31.
Harbor.
Because there's a Route
31.
31 credit union that
I
just
knew it was
went in.
31, and I thought of Baskin Robbins. But anyway.
So Harbor 31 along.
Yeah, but my thing is, and it will always be public access. Now I know they got that little strip that you have to crawl like a baby to get up there, cause the little foundation to crawl up there is shaky and rocky. But are they gonna make it wider, the newer development? And even by Adelaide Point, will there be public access to Muskegon Lake, aside from Heritage Landing, which has parties in it all summer long?
So and we can have Director Echolm come up as well if I miss anything or expound, but the entire boardwalk of Harbor 31 will remain publicly accessible, and a new access point has been added already. I happen to walk it almost daily now. It's
Where's
nice.
it at? 'Cause
It's the near Terrace Point Landing. So in the far end,
Meridian
they
Shores
created a
development.
new pathway to access.
You're looking at the Parmenter building on the left-hand side.
Okay.
Yeah, it's over that way. And then I would add that we have recorded easements to that boardwalk as well. And through the PUD plan for Harbor 31, there will be new wider sidewalks put in to get to that boardwalk.
Okay. And even with Adelaide Point, will there be public access?
The current PUD planned unit development that's been approved by the city commission and the planning commission actually calls for a net increase in public access because
Okay,
we'll be
yes.
codifying easements for the two peninsulas that exist out there now that are currently private property, and then we'll be moving the bike path closer to the lake from where it is now.
Now, from how far from the lake inland is the easement for public access? Will it be like 100 feet or what?
No,
50 feet or what?
when you're out there, it's on the bike path. It's the two peninsulas that actually jut out into the lake, and then also the master site plan calls for the construction of a boardwalk with a fishing pier that would extend out into the lake to serve as the break wall for the marina, and that would also be public.
Would it have benches?
I believe that's planned. Yeah, I don't know about on the fishing pier, but at least out on the peninsulas, there's plans.
So I'll be able to walk out there and go sit on the bench.
That's my understanding. Yep.
Okay, you know all about public access to the lake.
Absolutely.
Because, and free
Yep.
public access to the lake, because some people don't have any money and they just want to go sit on the water.
Indeed. Yes. So you've
Yep.
got a city staff and you've got a city commission who is very keen on enhancing and expanding public access to our waterfront.
Okay. Without the private people looking at you like, what are you doing here?
Well, if they do give you a look, tell them to talk to me.
You know they ain't gonna give you no look.
I
Okay,
trust
that's
that,
all I wanted to
Dina.
know. Thank you.
I so appreciate you. Yeah, thank you.
Really
Director
quickly,
Ekholm.
I did get an answer from the inspections director about the previous item. There would be an interior inspection on those short-term rental units to give them their short-term rental certificate of occupancy. So it'd be an initial inspection, and then future inspections would be exterior. Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that while I was up here.
So that is good to know. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right. Miss Ann Vandermolen, joining us.
Last if somebody else wants
Oh, you want to remain last? We have one more person who has submitted a comment card outside of yourself. Okay. Wait, we might have two. Nicole, did you want to get back up and speak again? I did. Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if this was an old one or not. So we actually have two more people before you, Miss Ann Vandermolen, because Mr. Vanderwhite, you wish to speak again as well? All right. Miss Vandenberg, or Vandenberg? Vandenberg. Welcome back.
I just had a question for the zoning administrator. What is the minimum square footage for a rental unit?
For a single-family rental unit?
Yeah.
It's the same as any single-family unit. It's 850 square feet as it exists today. The proposal would take it down to 500.
Okay, but the short-term rentals, how are they gonna get short-term rental permits if those things are 210 square feet?
Sure. So I don't believe that.
Mr. Ekholm, come up and answer this question. So typically, I would refer you to have this conversation afterwards, but I did earlier in the night tell you to come up and ask this question during general public comment. So I'm going to receive this question now and answer your question now. But I do want anyone at home to be able to hear the
me.
question
Sure.
or the answer from our Director Ekholm.
So the question was, how would a short-term rental unit such as was proposed and passed tonight be able to get a short-term rental inspection if they are below the minimum square footage per the zoning ordinance for construction of single-family homes? So, as was mentioned by International Building Code and Michigan Building Code, they're not single-family homes. So they are getting an occupancy inspection, which has more to do with safety. And I want to preface this by saying I'm not the inspections director. But those occupancy, short-term rental certificate of occupancy don't really look at minimum square footages, that things that are more related to construction. They look at things that are more related to occupancy and safety. So I think that's the best answer that I can give with the expertise that I have. So.
All right. Thank you, Director Ekholm.
I think what's happening is a loophole, basically. You know, because campgrounds are regulated by the DEQ, Eagle. So this isn't gonna be regulated as a campground, even though it has campground posts. And I think another variance that it would need would be how many how many trailers can you park on a single family home? Because I'm sure there's an ordinance against having 10 trailers on a property. Another issue is property taxes. When other people are doing short-term rentals, they're paying their property taxes. They're paying 40% more on average than owner occupied units. And because these are not brick and mortar, we're not receiving money from the city for dwelling units that are there. The assessor is going to look at it as, okay, I see one duplex and I see a bunch of posts around. So I don't think it's going to accurately take in the taxes that it should. And we have zoning for mobile home parks. It's in the master plan. So why isn't this considered a mobile home park if these are mobile homes? And I'm sure there's setbacks for mobile home parks, how close they can be together. So when you're talking about doing a PUD, a planned unit development, I don't see any units being developed here. I see a duplex on a lot, and I see movable things that aren't paying taxes. There's just so many reasons why it would need variances, and a PUD is saying, okay, let's run with this. It's grandfathered in. It can run with the land forever. I don't know if there's a stipulation saying that these tiny homes have to have siding on them or if they can be regular RVs. It wasn't brought up. There wasn't enough public comment on the issue, in my opinion.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Mr. Vanderwijk, joining us from the McLaughlin neighborhood. Welcome.
Yes, Randy Vandroid, 1577 Clinton Street. I serve as the president for the McLaughlin neighborhood. And before I get to what I'm going to speak on, I just want to maybe assure the city manager a little bit that I was unable to make it to the stakeholder times with the two candidates, but I had received, as president of the McLaughlin neighborhood, a phone call from Mr. Kozel, and he told me that he had reached out to a number of people prior to those stakeholder meetings. So I just really appreciated him and his willingness to do his homework in advance to really get to know what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked, what suggestions might the community have. So just want to put that out there. Now what I'm here for, in the vision statement, it talks about the city wanting to be offering a vibrant, affordable, and ethnically diverse city where citizens feel safe, enjoy their neighborhoods, and have access to city government. 2 Saturdays ago, some McLaughlin neighbors ended up in the hospital due to smoke inhalation. And these men were residents of Open Gates of Grace ministry, housing low-income. Open Gates of Grace is a ministry which houses low-income men in single-room occupancies in the basement of a church building on the corner of Terrace and Irwin. And part of the reason these men, I think, ended up in the hospital is that there really wasn't emergency exits in place for them or sprinklers. And part of that has to do because right now we don't have in our city ordinances anything regarding single-room occupancies. I'm not faulting the Open Gates of Grace. I'm not faulting the city. I've spoken with Director Franzik to say, hey, let's see what we can do about getting something in the city ordinances moving ahead as a wake-up call to us that there's nothing currently there. And this might have been able to be avoided. It wasn't. It's where we're at now. But hopefully we can put some things in place so that in the future we are able to help citizens feel safe. So I'm inviting you to hold me accountable to that. And yeah, speaking to Director Franzik, he mentioned he was going to be gone, but did invite me to reach out to him. So I plan on doing so when he's back. So thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your concerns and thoughts. Appreciate your input. Before I go to Ms. Vander Molen, is there anyone else in the audience who has not spoken that wishes to speak? All right. Ms. Vander Molen, welcome up. Joining us from Roosevelt Park. How are you? Doing well, thank you. You have 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
A little nervous. Again, okay. The other day I was flipping through the channels on the TV. I turned to a movie I was always curious about because it was a musical at first. The movie was Dear Evan Hansen. It talks about the struggles of 3 teens, Connor, Evan, and Alana. Even though I had some challenges growing up, I couldn't totally relate to the characters' lives because I had a good upbringing. But the characters were gripping nonetheless. A while back, I read the account of Michael Reagan's story of the sexual abuse he suffered as a teen. His story is online and is called The Truth That Set Michael Reagan Free. It tells how he had much anger at his abuser and he beat up on everything in sight. Michael had a great support system, though, in his dad, Ronald Reagan, when he told him. There were many reasons why we have kids like Connor, Evan, and Alana in our midst. I would argue that these kids are possibly neglected, mentally abused, physically abused, sexually abused, or bullied, or a combination of some of those. Sorry. Nobody should harm anybody else's body. I wrote a report on the guy that I spoke about before 8 years ago, not because I hated him, but because I wanted to be there for any other girl that might have gone through a similar situation. I'm not accusing this man of harming anyone else. I just wanted to be there to support anyone else if need be. After he did what he did, I started to get angry. At first, I didn't know why I was so angry. In our text, he asked me why I was so angry. When I threatened to tell a certain person what went on, he told me that I should think long and hard about it. He told me that he was the most powerful man in Muskegon. That intimidated me, but I filed the complaint anyway. In a way, he wasn't lying. I don't hate him, but what he did was wrong. No one should harm anybody else's body. 1 in 6 boys are molested. 1 in 4 girls are molested. I've had many men and many women who want me to keep speaking out about this. When I took one of my chemistry classes, the professor for that class would literally bang her head on the podium when someone asked a dumb question. That was hilarious, but lately, I feel like doing the same thing. In light of a very public and recent event, I'm going to keep speaking out on behalf of children and adults as well. We need to stop the abuse in Muskegon County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vandermolen. Appreciate you joining us tonight. All right. Commissioners, would you like to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Emery, supported by Commissioner St. Clair to adjourn. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.